Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories, the signal I've always found comfort in isolation. That's why the job at Blackrock Point Lighthouse appealed to me, 6 months alone on a rocky outcropping 10 miles from the nearest coastal town of Havensport. Just me, the gulls, and the Atlantic stretching endlessly toward Europe. The lighthouse had been automated decades ago, but the Coast Guard still maintained a keeper position. Someone needed to be on site for maintenance, weather reporting, and to serve as a first responder for maritime emergencies. My predecessor, Harold Jenkins, had retired after 30 years. When I arrived for the handover, he seemed eager to leave, too eager. His hands trembled as he showed me the equipment, and his eyes kept darting toward the horizon. "The light never goes out," he said, tapping the massive Fresnel lens housing. "No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, the light stays on. That's the only rule that matters." I laughed. "I think I can handle flipping a switch." His weathered face didn't share my amusement. "It's not about the switch, son. It's about what happens when you start seeing things that ain't there." He paused, then shook his head. "Forget it, just old man talk, you'll be fine." Within a week, Harold was gone, and I settled into my routine. The lighthouse keeper's cottage was surprisingly comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a decent kitchen, a small living room with a fireplace, and a study crammed with logbooks dating back to the 1870s. The Coast Guard had installed modern amenities, satellite internet, television, and a state-of-the-art radio system. The work itself was straightforward. Check the light, record weather conditions, perform minor maintenance, and monitor emergency channels. I had plenty of free time to read, hike the small island, and simply watch the ocean. Perfect for someone like me who had grown weary of people. My first month passed without incident. I spoke to my Coast Guard supervisor twice a week, reporting nothing more exciting than a pod of dolphins or particularly spectacular sunsets. I began to think Harold's cryptic warning was just the ramblings of a man who'd spent too much time alone. Then came the storm. It rolled in from nowhere, a wall of black clouds advancing across the water like an invading army. The weather service hadn't predicted anything like it. One minute I was enjoying my morning coffee on the cottage porch. The next I was racing inside as rain lashed horizontally against the windows. The wind howled, not like normal wind, but like something alive and furious. I'd weathered storms before. Growing up in Maine, you get used to nor'easters, but this felt different, more focused, as if the storm had targeted Blackrock Point specifically. I checked the light, made sure the backup generators were ready, and settled in for a long day. The radio crackled with increased chatter as fishing boats and pleasure craft sought safe harbor. I monitored the emergency channel, ready to relay distress calls to the Coast Guard station in Havensport. Around dusk, as the storm reached its peak, the radio emitted a burst of static that made me jump. Through the white noise came a voice, faint, distorted. "Assistance, taking on water, position, Blackrock." I grabbed the microphone. "This is Blackrock Point Lighthouse. Vessel requesting assistance, please repeat your position and status." More static then. "Sinking, all souls, help us. Vessel in distress, this is Blackrock Point. I'm relaying your call to Coast Guard Havensport. Please confirm your position and number of persons aboard." The response chilled me. "They won't come, they know. Blackrock calls, always calls." I immediately contacted Havensport, relaying the distress call. The officer on duty sounded confused. "We're not showing any vessels in your vicinity, Blackrock. All registered boats are accounted for in harbor or well outside your range." "I'm telling you, someone's out there," I insisted. "They're in trouble. Radar's clear, Murphy. Nothing within 10 miles of you except that storm. Maybe you're picking up radio interference. Happens sometimes during electrical storms." I wanted to argue but couldn't. I returned to the emergency channel. "Vessel in distress. Coast Guard reports no ships in this area. Please confirm your location." The voice returned, clearer now. "At your doorstep." "We've always been at your doorstep." A chill ran down my spine. I moved to the window, peering through rain-streaked glass. The beam from the lighthouse cut through the darkness, illuminating the churning sea below and the jagged rocks that gave Blackrock its name. "Nothing there, no vessel, no lights, nothing but angry waves. There's no ship outside," I said into the radio. The voice laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Not anymore." The radio went dead. Not just the emergency channel, all channels, nothing but static. Even the weather service frequency was silent. I tried the satellite phone, no signal. I told myself it was the storm. Electrical interference, like the Coast Guard suggested. I was just on edge from the weather and the isolation. I made myself a strong cup of coffee and settled in the study with one of the old logbooks to distract myself. The entry that caught my eye was dated October 17, 1887. "Terrible storm today. Lost the Meridian, a merchant vessel out of Boston. All hands perished on the rocks. Heard their cries but could do nothing." The light was on, but Captain Reynolds later claimed he never saw it. Impossible. The light never fails. I flipped forward several decades to an entry from 1932, another vessel lost tonight. The harbor master says no ships were due past Blackrock, but I heard them on the wireless. I saw their lights. When I reported it, they said I was mistaken. The light was on. I keep it on, always on. My hands trembled as I closed the book. Just coincidence, I told myself. Blackrock Point was notorious for shipwrecks. That's why they built the lighthouse in the first place. These waters had claimed hundreds of vessels over the centuries. The storm raged through the night. I checked the light hourly, making sure the generators were functioning. Each time I scanned the horizon for any sign of a vessel in distress. Nothing, just darkness and rain. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky cleared to a brilliant blue and the sea calmed to gentle swells. I made my report to Havensport, mentioning the strange radio transmission. Probably just crossed signals, my supervisor said. Or someone playing a prank. Happens more than you'd think. I wanted to believe him. But later that day, walking the rocky shoreline, I found something that made my blood run cold, a piece of weathered wood, clearly part of a ship's hull. The name Meridian was still faintly visible in peeling paint. The Meridian, the ship mentioned in the 1887 logbook. I told myself it was a coincidence, maybe another ship with the same name. Or perhaps the wood had been there for decades and I just hadn't noticed it before. But deep down I knew better. That night I dreamed of drowning, of cold, black water filling my lungs as I clawed desperately toward a distant light that never came closer. I woke gasping, sheets soaked with sweat despite the chill in the room. The next few days passed without incident. I threw myself into maintenance projects, cleaning the cottage from top to bottom, anything to keep busy. But each night I found myself drawn to the study, to those old logbooks. Each one contained similar stories, mysterious distress calls, ships that shouldn't have been there, vessels lost despite the lighthouse's warning beam. 1 week after the storm, I was awakened at 3:17 a.m. by the sound of the radio crackling to life. I stumbled from bed, certain a real emergency was underway. But when I reached for the microphone, the transmission was already playing. Blackrock Point Lighthouse, this is the vessel Meridian requesting guidance. We are caught in heavy fog and fear we are off course. My mouth went dry. This is Blackrock Point. There is no fog tonight. The sky is clear. Who is this? ... Cannot see your light. Please direct us away from the rocks. This isn't funny, I said, my voice rising. The Meridian sank in 1887. Who the hell is this? A pause then. We know when we are keeper, do you? I slammed down the microphone and ran to the lighthouse. The night was indeed clear, stars brilliant overhead. The light was functioning perfectly, sweeping its beam across the calm waters. And there, just at the edge of visibility, was a ship, a three-masted schooner of a type not seen on these waters for a century. I grabbed the binoculars from their hook. The vessel was moving steadily toward the rocks, seemingly oblivious to the lighthouse beam. As I watched, horrified, I could see figures on deck, moving with strange, jerky motions. And on the bow, clear as day, Meridian, I raced back to the radio. Vessel approaching Blackrock, you are on collision course with the rocks. Alter course immediately. Alter course. The same voice responded, calm amidst my panic. We always alter course, keeper. We always listen, but we always return. I watched, helpless, as the ship maintained its heading. It should have run aground, should have splintered against the rocks. Instead, just as it reached the jagged outcropping, it dissolved like fog burning away in sunlight. One moment it was there, solid and real, the next, nothing but empty ocean. I didn't sleep again that night or the next. I pored over the logbooks, finding the same pattern repeated throughout the decades. Ships that appeared on clear nights, distress calls from vessels long lost, and always the keeper's insistence that the light was working properly. I contacted my supervisor, trying to sound casual as I asked about previous incidents at Blackrock. You mean accidents, shipwrecks, he asked. More like unusual occurrences, strange radio transmissions. Visual anomalies, a long pause. Murphy, are you doing okay out there? Need me to send someone to check on you? No, I backpedaled quickly, just curious about the history. I've been reading the old logbooks. Ah, he sounded relieved. Some of those old-timers got pretty dramatic in their writings. Isolation plays tricks on the mind. That's why we rotate keepers these days instead of letting them stay for years like we used to. After that, I kept my observations to myself. But they continued. Every few nights, the radio would crackle with voices from ships long lost. Sometimes I'd see them on the horizon, ancient schooners, 20th century fishing trawlers, once even what looked like a colonial-era merchant vessel. Always approaching the rocks, always vanishing before impact. I began to dread sundown. During daylight, Blackrock Point was just a lonely, beautiful place. But at night, it transformed into something else, a crossroads between worlds, perhaps, or a wound in reality that never properly healed. 2 months into my assignment, I made a discovery that changed everything. While cleaning the study, I moved a heavy bookcase and found a hidden panel in the wall behind it. Inside was a small compartment containing a leather-bound journal, not an official logbook but a personal diary. The name inside, Harold Jenkins. My predecessor had kept a secret record of his experiences. As I read, my hands shaking, I found my own recent encounters described in detail. The same ships, the same voices, the same pattern repeated throughout his 30 years at BlackRock. The final entry, dated just before my arrival, read, "It's getting worse. They're coming more frequently now, not just at night anymore. Yesterday I saw the Meridian at noon, clear as day. The voices are louder. They know my name now. They're calling me to join them. I can't stay any longer. God forgive me for what I'm passing on to my replacement. The light must stay on. It's the only thing holding them back. They want the light. They've always wanted the light." I closed the journal, my mind racing. What did he mean the light was holding them back? Holding what back? And why would lost ships want the lighthouse extinguished? Unless, a terrible thought formed in my mind. What if the light wasn't saving ships? What if it was somehow causing their destruction? What if, by maintaining the lighthouse all these years, the keepers had been perpetuating some kind of cycle? I needed to test my theory, but the thought terrified me. Everything I'd been taught as a lighthouse keeper, everything I believed about my purpose here, revolved around keeping that light on. Harold's final warning echoed in my mind. The light never goes out, but I had to know. The next night was clear and calm, perfect conditions. I waited until midnight, then climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room. My hand hovered over the control panel. Just a few minutes, I told myself, just to see what happens. I flipped the switch. The massive Fresnel lens went dark. The beam that had swept across the water for over a century vanished. I held my breath, waiting. For several long minutes nothing happened. The night remained still and quiet. I began to feel foolish. What had I expected? Ghost ships to suddenly appear, voices to call out from the darkness. Then I noticed something strange. The stars were disappearing, not all at once, but one by one, as if being systematically erased from the sky. A creeping darkness was spreading across the horizon, blacker than the night itself. The radio in the corner of the room burst to life, a cacophony of voices all speaking at once. Free now. Light is gone. We can cross. Thank you, Keeper. Join us. The darkness continued to spread, and within it I began to see shapes, hundreds of them. Ships of all eras, from wooden sailing vessels to modern freighters, all converging on BlackRock Point. But they weren't solid. They were like negative images, holes in reality through which something else was visible, something vast and ancient and hungry. The radio voices grew louder, more insistent. "The door is open. We've waited so long. Your turn now, Keeper. The light, why did you douse the light?" With trembling hands, I lunged for the switch, flipping it back on. The lens hummed to life, the beam cutting through the darkness. The shapes on the horizon wailed, a sound of such profound despair and rage that I covered my ears in pain. Slowly, they retreated, the stars returning one by one. The radio fell silent. I collapsed onto the floor of the lantern room, shaking uncontrollably. What had I done? What had I almost unleashed? I understood now. The lighthouse wasn't just a warning to ships. It was a barrier, a keeper of boundaries. The light didn't just illuminate, it held something back. Something that used the forms of lost ships and drowned sailors as vessels, as disguises. Something that wanted to cross over. And I had almost let it in. The next morning I tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination. Stress, isolation, suggestion from reading those old logbooks. Any explanation seemed better than accepting what I had seen. I even considered requesting an early termination of my assignment, but I knew I couldn't leave. Not now. I knew what would happen if the light went out for too long. I had a responsibility, not just to passing ships, but to everyone. Because whatever waited beyond that darkness, it wasn't trying to enter just BlackRock Point. It wanted our world, so I stayed. I maintained the light with obsessive care. I learned to live with the voices on the radio, the phantom ships on the horizon. They were angry now, their messages more threatening. They knew what I had almost allowed and what I had ultimately denied them. "You could have freed us. We'll wait for the next keeper. Everyone breaks eventually." 4 months into my assignment, during a routine maintenance check, I discovered something scratched into the metal housing of the Fresnel lens. It had been hidden behind an access panel, only visible during deep cleaning. Names, hundreds of names etched in different hands, different styles. The lighthouse keepers of BlackRock Point, going back to the beginning. And beneath them a message: "We keep the light keeps the way closed, we are the last defense." I took out my pocket knife and added my name to the list. That night, standing at the window of the keeper's cottage, I watched the familiar beam sweep across the water. In the distance, the ghost ships gathered, more than I had ever seen before. Waiting, watching, patient in their hunger, the radio beside me crackled. "You have eternity, Keeper, but you have only one lifetime. The light will go out someday, and we will be waiting." I picked up the microphone. For the first time, I responded not with fear or confusion, but with determination. Then you'll be waiting a long time, I said, because as long as I'm here, the light stays on. I don't know if my replacement will understand the true purpose of Blackrock Point. I don't know if they'll discover Harold's journal, or see the names scratched into the lens housing, or experience the phantom ships and voices as I have. But I know what I'll tell them when the time comes for me to leave. The light never goes out, no matter what you see, no matter what you hear, the light stays on. That's the only rule that matters, because we aren't just lighthouse keepers, we're gatekeepers, and the tide of darkness is always rising.